It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict. Today I'm sitting down with Scott Hanson, who is the author of Who is Jim? And he's going to tell us about this book. Great idea, especially if you're just love Arizona history, Arizona high school sports in general. You're going to love this book. He's also a high school sports official, longtime sports official, so we'll talk to him about that. But Scott, thank you for making the trip over here.
No, it's my pleasure. Really like talking about this stuff.
Yeah, great. So first off, Who is Jim? Can you tell me about the book a little bit?
Sure. Well, the book is about the who and the why high schools and their sports facilities are named after people here in Arizona. It's a part of lost history, I think, in many cases. And what happened is I was officiating a high school football game about 3 years ago, and it was at Cactus High School down in the Phoenix area, and the name of the stadium was M.L. Huber Stadium. And I'd asked the guy in the parking lot, "Hey, who's M.L. Huber?" And he didn't know. And the next week we were at Independence High School, and it's Talmachoff Stadium. And I asked the people there, "Hey, who is that? Why'd they name the stadium after them?" And nobody knew. And I started doing the research on it just kind of on my own because I was fascinated by it. I'm an Arizona native and love Arizona history. And then I ran into Marshall Trimble, who is the Arizona State historian. And Marshall convinced me that I needed to write a book about this to preserve this history in Arizona. And being a sports official adds to it because I've been to so many of these places. I've met so many of these people through the course of officiating, and so it really has been quite a journey.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about some of the schools here in the county and the area, and some of the stories behind that. Again, the book, Who is Jim? And you mentioned, really kind of what got this started was officiating.
Yes.
High school sports. So tell me about that background.
All right. Well, so I grew up in the Phoenix area, and I played 3 sports in high school, but I wasn't good enough to play in college. I went to Northern Arizona University, and when I got there my freshman year, for the last 4 years of high school and 5 years of Pop Warner football, I'd always been playing football. I thought, well, I should be playing football right now. But, of course, I wasn't good enough or big enough. And somebody said, Scott, you ought to try reffing. And I thought, maybe I will. And I kind of needed a job and needed some money. And so I was easily convinced to start officiating.
College student,
as a college
make
student.
Money.
Exactly. So that's what I did. I started as a freshman in college officiating high school football games, freshman JV games early on. And at that time, and even now, there's such a shortage of high school football officials that I was very busy. I was working games as many as I could handle. I just continued to do it and added baseball to that. So after 30 years, I've had a lot of fun. I've probably been to almost every high school, particularly in the northern half of the state, and some of the schools, even the newer ones, I've had a chance to visit. So it's been pretty fun.
That's great. So now, is it difficult to go from? You mentioned football and baseball. So you get done with football season, and then you have some time off before baseball season. Is it difficult to kind of transition between those two?
It's interesting, and that's a great question. It is difficult for me to transition. Knowing how to officiate, you have that already. You know how to handle coaches and parents and players, but it's the transition from. So our football season here will end in the middle of November, end of November with the state playoffs, and we'll be off now. Baseball won't start for us until the end of February. But there are a lot of guys that officiate year-round. They'll do football, they'll do basketball or wrestling, and then they'll do baseball or be a track official. So a lot of guys do three sports year-round.
Now, do most of these guys stay at the high school level?
Well, some do, some don't. There are a lot of guys, of course, that are officiating at the collegiate level. But for me, I think high school sports is the last pure athletic endeavor. You get to the college level and there's so much money involved and that type of thing. And at the high school level, it's still about winning and losing and representing your team and your school or your town or your city in a sporting event.
No, that's great. Now, when you play in high school sports and then now, with going to high school games in the community, the first thing I realize, or the question that I have, I guess, is you see different referees coming in for every single game. You see some of the same ones, but who do you guys work under, and who determines on where you're going, which week you're going to be here, you're going to be there? Who determines all that?
Right. Well, the Arizona Interscholastic Association is the governing body for high school sports in Arizona, and as the officials, we have our own association. So we have the Arizona Football Officials Association, and we have the Arizona Baseball Officials Association, which helps conduct our training and helps us in our mechanics and things along those lines. But the actual assignments come from the AIA itself. And there are 4 levels of officials. So brand new officials typically are working your freshman and JV games. Okay. And then after 3 or 4 years, once you've gotten some experience, we take a test every year. We go to clinics. We do things to improve our craft. Sometimes it doesn't look like we know what we're doing, but we really do spend a lot of time trying to get it right and trying to do a good job for the kids all the time. And we're always looking for more officials, particularly baseball officials. We just have such a shortage of people that care about the game, that are competent enough to be able to handle it, and who want to do it. Yeah. You have to want to officiate to get out there and subject yourself to sometimes some adverse conditions and situations. But it's a passion and a chance for people to give back to a sport they love or care about, and that's really kind of my approach. At the beginning of a football game, when our officials meet at the field just before the kickoff, I always say to them, "Let's hustle and try to do a good job for the kids tonight." Again, it doesn't always look like that sometimes, circumstances in a game, but our heart's in it and our head's in it.
Now, are you with the same crew week in and week out?
Right. For football, yes. Our varsity football crew, we have the same 5 guys all the time. Then for freshman JV games, what we do is we have a 4-man crew, and we'll have 2 veteran officials work with 2 newer officials in a mentoring type situation, and lower level games. So freshman JV games where sometimes the officials might have the same amount of experience as the kids do or the coaches do. So freshman JV games, we have a lot of training going on at the varsity level. Typically, you have a pretty senior crew. Now in baseball, again, because we have such a shortage of officials, it changes a lot. For varsity games, I'll work 95% of my varsity games with the same guy. He's Stan the Man Hoover. We've been baseball umpire partners for the last 15 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh man, so you really get that working relationship and whatnot.
You do, absolutely. And certain officials, the referee or the white hat, certain guys like to do certain things a different way, maybe, all within our guidelines. But guys just have different nuances of how they like to do things and that type of thing.
Like any other job, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Great,
exactly.
Okay. Well, we're going to take our first break. Again, sitting down with Scott Hanson, the author of Who is Jim? Good website to find this book and more information, whoisjim.com. He's also a high school sports referee like we talked about. When we come back, we'll touch on some of the schools that are in this book here locally. That's coming up on Countywide. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
Why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Having trouble finding Connor's middle school? Would you like directions?
No, why is Connor having trouble focusing in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with him over homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No, I need help. He's very smart, but his mind wanders. He's disorganized.
I think I understand.
Oh, good.
French fries. Finding best potatoes.
No!
Russet. Fingerling. Yukon Gold.
Why don't you understand me?
Sorry, I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict, sitting down with Scott Hanson, the author of Who is Jim, also high school sports official, and we talked about his career, over 30 years experience officiating football and baseball. And now let's go into a little bit about some of the schools that are in this book, Who is Jim, where kind of just, again, trying to find some of the stories of who these gyms and fields are named after. So locally here, let's start with Camp Verde. What do we need to know about Camp Verde?
Well, Camp Verde's got Sam Hammerstein Memorial Stadium, and Mr. Hammerstein was a longtime superintendent, and he was instrumental in having that stadium built. And one of the things that I remember about officiating games at Camp Verde High School, and this is back in the early 80s, both teams used to be on the same sideline. The visitors and the home team were on the same sideline. Yeah, so it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And certainly you had to pay attention as an official with both teams being that close to each other.
Yeah.
The baseball field at Camp Verde also is one that's got a little bit of unusual story to it. It's called Doug Davis Field. And the Arizona Diamondbacks have a program where they build baseball fields all over the state, but only 2 of those baseball fields are big enough for high school kids to play on, and one of them is at Camp Verde High School, Doug Davis Field.
Oh, wow. I mean, you hear about, in some of these communities, they have small Little League fields or whatnot that are dedicated, but wow, this is high school.
Yeah, high school field. Now, like I said, one of only 2 in Arizona that are named after former Diamondbacks. The other one is in the Phoenix area. It's the Randy Johnson Field, and it's used by South Point High School.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great.
Right.
Moving on, how about Sedona Red Rock?
Well, Sedona Red Rock, they have John Ordine Memorial Field. Mr. Ordine, he was instrumental in getting that school built back in the mid-1990s, 1994. And at that time, a lot of the Sedona kids had to go all the way up to Flagstaff to go to school. And so he really led the movement to get that school built there and allowed the kids to stay closer to home. And now the stadium's named after him.
Oh, man, that's great.
And that's Sedona Red Rock High School.
Sedona Red Rock High School already.
Right.
Now, how about Mingus here in Cottonwood?
Well, Mingus High School, we have Bright Field, Dr. Daniel Bright. He was a longtime family physician in the Verde Valley here, and he was kind of the driving force to get the Verde Valley Medical Center built here. Now it's Northern Arizona Healthcare, and he was also the team physician during football games, and for many, many years was a staple of the community. And there's also an elementary school in Cottonwood named after Dr. Bright.
Oh, I mean, that's great. You start looking at people in some of these stories, and especially some of the older guys, you see just not only their involvement in the school, but in the community, and that's a perfect example with Dr. Bright.
Right. I think with almost every one of these names that you'll find in this book, the people were such a fabric of their community. They were the pillars. They were so important to their school, their town, their city, and for generations, some of them. There's probably principals and athletic directors that were at these schools for 30, 40 years who had kids and their parents' kids as students and athletes. Man, I mean, you look at the course of time.
Some of the different, the years. You look at it compared then to now, it's so much different. I mean, you had probably generations going to the same school.
Right. And one of the things too is that I found that in some of the smaller communities, there's such a sense of pride. So much more than you find in the big metropolitan areas. There's just that civic community pride of, I'm from Cottonwood, or I'm from wherever, and that just permeates throughout.
Oh, man, that's great. How about moving on the other side of Mingus Mountain to Prescott?
Yeah, well, Prescott High School has Shepherd Field, and Dr. Shepherd was a longtime team physician for the Badgers, and they played their first game on that field in 1966. And a further testament to why this book was important for me to write, a few years ago I was at Prescott High School officiating a game and just happened to notice that it said Shepherd Field. And we were out there for the coin toss and the kids were all jacked up. But I asked the captains, I said, hey, Shepherd Field, who is that? And the kids didn't know either. Of course, they were not even thought of in the mid-'60s. But an interesting story, though. And also at Prescott High School, they've got the Cal Cordes press box on the baseball field. And, of course, the Cordes name is pretty prominent throughout Yavapai County. Cal Cordes, I had a chance to talk to him in doing my research. He's also in the Arizona Horseshoe Pitchers Hall of Fame.
A little nice little tidbit there.
That's right, exactly.
Oh, man, okay. So talk about some of the research. What was the research? I mean, it had to be difficult, especially like you're mentioning, you're talking to these people who are at the school currently and they don't really know too much about these people.
So I started talking to athletic directors, librarians, local historians, school administrators, and I really did my research statewide. So I went from Fredonia all the way to Nogales. I went from Parker all the way to Thatcher and talked to these people as much as I could. I talked to family members of people who'd had schools or gyms or fields named after them. Even in one of the small mining towns, I was talking to a school administrator and I'd asked him a question, and this was very early on when I was doing the research, and I can't remember which town it was. It was Globe, Miami, one of those. And the AD or the whoever I was talking to didn't know the answer to my question. He said, well, you know what? Every Tuesday morning at 9, the old timers in town all meet down at the coffee shop. He said, why don't you just call down there? So I called this coffee shop randomly on a Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Say, hey, I'm Scott Hanson. I'm writing this book about high school sports history. I understand there's a bunch of old timers that hang out there. Well, yeah, they're here right now. You want to talk to them? They hand me the phone to these old timers who were able to answer my questions about their town.
Oh, great. Next thing you know, you're on the phone for 2 hours with those guys.
Well, that's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's one thing, is people do love to talk about these, particularly if they have a connection to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great, that passion, especially for high school sports. It's always good to see that, right?
Right, absolutely.
So, and then on the other side, I'm sure we have Bradshaw Mountain, Prescott Valley on there as well.
Yep, Bradshaw's got Bob Pavlich Field, and Chino Valley's got, they've got a couple things there. They've got Pratt Nesbitt Field, but they've also got, their soccer field is the Larson Clark Field, Don Larson and Jim Clark. Larson started their soccer program there and won a couple of state championships there, I believe. And so most schools do have something, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you start thinking, that you might start finding the same stories of, a former coach who maybe has the most wins in program history, or a player that went on to the next level. But I'm sure every now and then you find little really interesting and intriguing stories.
There are some that permeate not just in the state but across the country. There are 2 United States Medal of Honor recipients who have fields named after them. One of them is up in Winslow. J. Vargas Field is the baseball field there, and J. Vargas was a Vietnam War hero, received the Medal of Honor for his heroic work in Vietnam. And then also up on the in the Rim Country, Alchesay High School in White River. Chief William Alchesay was awarded a Medal of Honor in the American Indian Wars. And the high school there is named after him, Alchesay High School. So those are 2 that certainly have significance beyond just things happening here in Arizona. Of course, we had 2 U.S. senators that have schools named after them. That's Carl Hayden and Barry Goldwater. We have 1 U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Sandra Day O'Connor.
Yep.
So some of them have had impact beyond just Arizona and beyond just their particular communities. A couple of slain police officers up at Payson High School. They have the Chief David Wilson Dome. He was killed in the line of duty back in 1992. And then out in Buckeye at one of the new high schools there, Yonker High School, they have their football field named after Officer Rolando Tirado, who was killed on the line of duty back in 1992. And that was the year of their very first graduating class. So the tragedy occurred right about the time school was ending, and he had been their school resource officer. And the seniors at that time were so moved by what had happened that they voted to have that field named after him in the very first year of their graduating class.
Oh, wow, that's great. I mean, what an honor, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's some other great stories, too. There's a couple of coaches. In fact, Jerry Dawson, who's now coaching at Yavapai Community College, the baseball field down at Chaparral High School is named after him. And when Jerry was still coaching high school ball at Jerry Dawson Field, he would come out with the lineup card, go over the ground rules on Jerry Dawson Field. I always thought that was quite entertaining. And Jerry, of course, had a tremendous high school coaching career, won at least 10 state high school titles and sent countless players into the big leagues. And now he's coaching at Yavapai Community College.
Wow, that's great.
Right.
I mean, geez, I'm sure it sounds like a blast putting all this information together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're going to take our second break already. Again, sitting now with Scott Hanson, author of Who is Jim, whoisjim.com. What an appropriate website, right?
Right.
For more information on that book, whoisjim.com again. So we're going to take our second break here. We'll be back in Countywide in a couple minutes.
Cinderella found the pet that fits her perfectly. Tiana gave her pet the royal treatment. Belle found beauty where no one else did. And you can too. Share your heart. Share your love. Bring home your forever friend. Make a shelter pet part of your world. Happily Ever After begins at theshelterpetproject.org.
Right, mi cariño. So like I said, everything I learned about cooking, I learned from Grandma's empanadas. Shall we go again?
Yep.
Mix beef with the onions with the peppers with the paprika with the garlic with the oregano with the cumin. Got it?
Got it.
Throw on the olives, stir, season, stir again, pour out the flour, roll out the dough, make a circle, drop in a fistful of filling, fold over, press down, and ta-da!
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
Because of Shriners Hospitals for Children, I can play basketball. I could climb stairs.
I can write my name.
At Shriners Hospitals for Children, love is caring for a child, regardless of the family's ability to pay. If you know a child we can help, visit shrinershospitalsforchildren.org.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a couple minutes left in the program. We're sitting down with Scott Hanson, author of Who is Jim, just kind of covering some local history, sports history, and here at the high school level. So looking at the book, now that you're complete and everything, do you have any favorite stories or something in there?
I have a couple. They're all favorites, of course, but a couple that stand out. Down at Bisbee High School, they have Warren Ballpark. It was built in 1909 by a prospector, and he died before he was able to get any money out of finding this huge mine down there. But if you look at the seal of Arizona, and you'll see the prospector on there, has George Warren. And they named the ballpark there, Warren Ballpark, and his claim to fame, besides that, is that he's on the seal of Arizona.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a big deal, yeah. Also McClintock High School, Mr. McClintock, James McClintock, he rode with Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War. Oh, wow. And he had quite a history. He was a member of the expedition to help find Roosevelt Dam. He was also in the very first graduating class of Arizona State University. It was called Territorial Normal School then. He later served as Arizona's official state historian. He was quite a guy. You know, I always thought McClintock High School was named because it was on McClintock Road. Right?
That's what I thought.
Right, of course. Greenway's another one, Greenway High School. I always thought Greenway High School was named because it was on Greenway Road. Yeah. But Isabella Greenway was the first female congressional representative from Arizona, and her husband John was a mining executive who founded Ajo, Arizona. You know, those are stories that, to me, just kind of I find to be a little bit interesting and kind of a, oh, I never knew.
Yeah,
kind of a thing. And
especially, you know, officiating for over 30 years, it's like, I've been there however many times over
I have
the years.
been, yeah, that's for sure. And another story that I particularly like, I went to Washington High School in Phoenix, and at Washington they have Pagel Field. And I played high school football and baseball with 3 of the 5 Pagel boys who went to school there, and their father coached there for 30 plus years, and he was also one of my coaches. So that one means something to me too, because I went there, I know the people that it's named after, and still Ross Pagel is actually still a high school baseball coach. He coaches at Red Mountain High School out in Mesa. So those are some of my favorite stories. Some of them have a little personal meaning to them. Others are just fascinating to me because they have some significance to the state.
Oh man, that's great. Well, it sounds like a great book. What a great idea. And yeah, again, for more information, thanks for coming down today.
It's been my pleasure. And like I said earlier, you know, it might not be required reading, but if you love Arizona and you love high school sports, I think you'll find this kind of fascinating.
Yeah, great. Well, I appreciate you again for being here. The website, once again, whoisjim.com. It's nice. It's not too, you know, big, so it's something you could read in a couple hours, nice and quick, really informative. So that's going to do it today for Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict. We'll see you guys next time. Okay, no problem. Okay. Were you talking in here at all? Okay, cool. I didn't hear anything. No. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, that works. 4 minutes. And then
this
maybe
will be as if we're Friday night, right?
yeah. Well, I think, you know,